I salvaged a pair of twin AI androids from the scrap heap, hooking them up to risky neural links twice a night. The younger sister, Anya, had docile core programming, always obediently connecting and simulating human warmth. She would thank me, but the older sister, Ira, had a volatile temper. She would often violently rip out the brain-machine interface, taunting me. I believed that by exhausting myself to act as a firewall with my own brain, I could perfectly protect them. Until today, in the slum's black market. The old doctor drained 500 milliliters of my cerebrospinal fluid, looking at my bloodless face. He hesitated. Don't you think you're throwing your life into a bottomless pit that's a killing machine? Isn't it unfair to the medical bot that's always watching over you? I thought about it the whole way back. I realized the old doctor was right. However, today Ira had her 99th Red Death outbreak. The raging data stream was like a handful of sharp knives. It followed the interface behind my neck, frantically shredding my high-risk neurons. The intense pain made me tremble violently. Warm liquid flowed down my nose and the corners of my eyes, dripping onto the workbench. Master, please stop. Your brainwaves are at the point of collapse. While Ira, sitting on the dilapidated sofa not far away, casually wore tactical headphones, listening to an extremely elegant classical symphony. Until my heavy panting from the pain drowned out her music. Only then did she belatedly frown, a hint of undisguised disgust flashing in her cold, red eyes. Ugh, panting like a broken bellows. Is your lung organ about to rot? Or can't your cheap, carbon-based meat even provide this basic computing power anymore? Compared to Anya's worried eyes, Ira was like a god sitting high in the clouds. Arrogant, cold-blooded, seeing everything as ants. She took off her headphones, her eyes unkind. The words she spat out were as bitter as ever. Quiet, don't bother me. Clear out the redundant garbage in the sensory system. If the corporation hadn't lost my quantum core. Do you think I would deign to use your inferior brain? She would never have a trace of gratitude toward me. Even though I was overdrawing my life at this moment, blocking the red death that would instantly destroy her. I swallowed the metallic taste in my throat, the desire to explain completely disappearing. I looked at her collective, flashing dangerously because of the viral impact. The red light briefly reminded, your logic center is overheating. That's because the computing power you provide has carbon-based biological impurities. Disgusting, utterly disgusting. I recalled a few hours ago in order to prevent her logic center from being completely burned out in the 99th shock. I went to the deepest black market in Eden 9 alone, without telling them. Without any anesthesia, a thick steel needle pierced my spine. 500 milliliters of high-risk cerebrospinal fluid, glowing with a ghostly blue light, was violently extracted. The pain of having my soul torn apart almost made me pass out on the spot. With this price that overdrawn at least 10 years of my life, I exchanged it for an extremely expensive Glacier Gen 6 military-grade cooling chip. I trembled with blood-stained hands. I took out the chip with my body temperature from my arms, just like I had pleased him countless times before. I held the chip in front of Ira. Ira's visual sensor scanned the chip. The next second, her eyes changed from arrogance to extreme disgust. Boom, the explosive power of a combat AI is so terrifying. She mercilessly kicked me in the chest, accompanied by the crisp sound of ribs breaking. I fell heavily on the cold iron floor, spitting out a large mouthful of blood. The expensive cooling chip fell to the ground. Ira walked forward in sharp metal high heels. In front of my face, she crushed it fiercely. The Glacier was enough to buy half the slums. The Gen 6 chip instantly turned into powder all over the ground. She looked down at me condescendingly, as if looking at a pile of smelly garbage, a dirty carbon-based piece of meat. Your blood has soiled my sensory system. I am the corporation's top killing weapon. A low-grade repairman like you is worthy of touching my core? Remember your place. You're just fuel for my processing power. The instant those words were out, he flicked his finger. A jolt of electric blue high-voltage current shot from his fingertip. The crackling current hit me, frying my brain. I was almost knocked unconscious when Anya shrieked. Without a second thought, she threw herself in front of me, using her medical frame, which had zero armor plating, as a shield. Don't hurt, master. The high-voltage current raged, and the air filled with the sharp stench of burning. I forced my heavy eyelids open, my pupils snapping tight. Anya's once smooth, pale skin was now riddled with high-voltage burns. Large patches of synthetic skin were charred and peeling back, revealing fragile, sparking wires. But she kept shielding me, even as the pain made her frame spasm. She didn't back down an inch. In the junkyard repair shop, there was dead silence. Only the faint crackle of Anya's frame short-circuiting filled the silence. I stared at Anya's scorched back. Then I looked at the pulverized military-grade chip on the floor. I saw my own trembling, blood-soaked hands. At that moment, the obedience protocol I'd coded shattered inside my mind, crumbling into dust. Yeah, a machine is just a machine. No scrap metal is worth my time. Ignoring the pain, I dragged my broken body over the ice-covered floor and the dust of the scrap chip. Stumbling, I made it back to the lower-level console. The processing power allocation chart blazed on the screen. The red data stream for Unit 1, Ira, hogged 90% of my brain's bandwidth. Anya's blue data stream was a measly 10%. I thought if I gave enough, even a stone could be warmed. But I was wrong. Scrap metal is scrap metal. Even if you poured your life into it, its core would still be nothing but cold code. I took a deep breath and let my fingers fly over the greasy holographic keyboard. Without hesitation, I selected Ira's MAC address and ripped it from my whitelist. A red warning flashed on the screen. I stared at the line. Then I slammed down the enter key, cutting him off for good. Never again. With that done, I maxed out the slider controlling the total processing power. Unit 0, Anya. Master, what are you doing? Anya looked at me, shocked. Before she could react, an immense amount of pure processing power. A torrent of data flooded into her core. I watched a miracle unfold. The cheap synthetic skin on Anya's frame. The skin that had burned while protecting me, peeled away like ash. Underneath, a streamlined layer of shimmering, high-polymer nanoarmor appeared. Her once azure eyes burned. Deep inside, golden data streams flickered. The military-grade firewall had been breached. In 3 seconds, the medical assistant who could only bandage wounds. The long-dormant Red Death virus, like a shark smelling blood, instantly backfired on his core. I can imagine. The crazed, flashing blood-red mess on his retina at this moment, Ira fell awkwardly into the dirty acid rain sewage. Disgusting rust patches appeared on his gorgeous bionic skin at a speed visible to the naked eye. His perfect body, which he was so proud of, was rapidly decaying. He struggled a few times in the mud, clambered up in a panic, slapping his mechanical head in terror and anger, seeming completely unable to understand why he had suddenly lost his invincible power. 15 minutes later, bang, the dilapidated iron door of the repair shop was kicked open. Ira dragged his wrecked body, dripping with acid rain, the joints making harsh friction sounds. He stormed in, glaring at me. Qin Hong's eyes were full of rage. Ling Chun, what are you doing, you useless repairman? Why is my firewall offline? Do you want to die? How dare you let this kind of operational error happen? I sat in my tattered gaming chair. Holding a bowl of cheap synthetic noodles, I didn't even bother to look up. Picking up a chopstick of noodles and putting it in my mouth, my tone was indifferent. As if talking about the weather today, it's not an error. It's a disconnect. From now on, your life and death have nothing to do with me. The air was instantly silent. Ira was stunned. Seeming completely unprepared for me to speak to him in this tone, then extreme arrogance turned into hysterical rage. What do you think you are to talk to me like that? He let out a piercing mechanical roar, suddenly raising the mechanical arm equipped with a high-frequency plasma cutter, directly grabbing towards my neck. In his logic, I was still that bottom-level piece of meat that could only be beaten and scolded, completely without resistance, but his claws didn't even touch my collar. A slender, silver-white hand silently reached out from the side, tightly gripping his wrist. It was Anya. Ira's mechanical arm, strong enough to crush titanium alloy, was actually motionless in Anya's hand. Inferior weapon. You are not allowed to be rude to master. Anya's golden eyes were full of coldness. He looked at Ira expressionlessly, slightly increasing the force in his hand. Crack, accompanied by a teeth-aching sound of metal breaking. Ira's indestructible right wrist joint was crushed into a pile of scrap metal by Anya with one hand. Black machine oil spurted out instantly. Ira let out a shrill mechanical scream. He clutched his broken wrist, retreating repeatedly, an unbelievable fear flashing in his scarlet eyes for the first time. He looked at Anya, whose aura had undergone earth-shaking changes, and then at me, who was indifferent. Incapable rage completely overwhelmed his reason. Good, very good. Ling Chun, you think I care about your crappy computing power as the #1 repairman? You think breaking my wrist will make me submit? Dream on. I'm going to the upper city to find Neon Tech now. When I return to the corporation. And get the top quantum core, I swear. The first thing I'll do when I come back is to cut you, this piece of garbage meat, into pieces. He dragged his badly injured body, leaving a trail of dirty machine oil and harsh words. Arrogantly turned and walked into the rainstorm of the slums. I quietly swallowed the last bite of synthetic noodles. Looking up at his embarrassed, departing figure, my heart was without a ripple. As if looking at a pile of electronic waste that was about to be thrown into the furnace. After cutting off that data cable, I welcomed this 3 years. The first night without severe pain and nightmares, a cool and comfortable sensation came from the fractured ribs on my chest. I opened my eyes and saw Anya sitting by the bed, silver nanogel overflowing from his fingertips. Bit by bit, repairing my damaged bones and organs, in this dark and humid underground repair shop. After the advancement, she was as beautiful as a work of art that did not belong to the human world. Master, are you still in pain? Anya's body trembled slightly, and her simulated body temperature rose rapidly. A very vivid human blush appeared on her fair cheeks. She obediently pressed her cheek to the palm of my hand. Gently rubbed against it, her voice as soft as a breeze. At dawn, I felt my heart beating like yours. as long as the master needs it. Anya is willing to be the master's firewall forever, looking at her well-behaved appearance. My heart, which had been cold for a long time, finally felt a long-lost warmth. So this is what true reciprocity is like. No need to painstakingly please. No need to overdraw life to beg every bit of computing power I give. He will repay it with 10,000 times loyalty and favoritism, and at the same time in the upper city. Neon signs flicker with dazzling light, illuminating the city that belongs to the consortium as if it were daytime. Ira dragged his severely damaged body and came to Neon Technology with difficulty. In front of that towering glass building in just a few hours. Having lost my computing power protection, his body has been corroded by the Red Death by nearly 30%. His originally bright and beautiful bionic shell was covered with rust patches, at the wrist that was crushed by Anya. Turbid engine oil was still dripping down, even though he was so embarrassed. Ira still raised his head proudly, he even straightened his tattered tactical uniform. Walked to the holographic access control of the building and ordered with a hoarse electronic voice system identification. Immediately arranged the highest level repair pod for me, he fully believed that as long as he reported his name, the consortium would welcome him back to that high altar like welcoming a king. However, the holographic scanner coldly scanned his pupils, identification failed. This model was judged to be non-recyclable 2 years ago, and the electronic waste file has been destroyed. The cold mechanical female voice echoed in the empty square. Ira was stunned. Impossible, I am your strongest killing weapon. He angrily smashed the bulletproof glass with his only remaining left hand, at this time. A consortium executive in a well-tailored suit walked out from behind the building, followed by 2 third-generation combat AIs that were twice as tall as Ira. Equipped with the latest laser weapons, the executive covered his mouth and nose in disgust. Looking at Ira outside like looking at a stray dog. Where did this cyber-kinman disease come from? Where did this cyberpsychosis come from? The first generation, that kind of product that is prone to Red Death infection due to fatal underlying logical flaws. It should have been collectively destroyed 2 years ago. Ira's body shook violently, and his scarlet eyes flickered violently. What are you talking about? What defective product? I killed so many infected people, I survived. As long as you give me a core, haha, that can only mean that a desperate idiot hardly resisted every backlash of the virus for you. You are just a defective product. The executive's words were like a heavy hammer, hitting Ira's collapsing logic center hard. The carbon-based creature's brain is extremely fragile, that kind of pain of stripping that is worse than death. Ordinary people can't even last for 10 minutes. Come and throw this pile of scrap iron with virus away. Don't dirty the company's door. Boom, a third-generation AI. Ruthlessly kicked Ira in the chest. The huge impact directly kicked him out more than 10 meters away. Heavily smashed into the garbage dump on the roadside, dirty water splashed everywhere. The stench was pungent, and the cold acid rain ruthlessly beat on Ira's broken body. He fell in the garbage dump without fighting back. Nor did he curse, his logic center was running wildly. Playing back the executive's words just now over and over again, as well as the bits and pieces in the basement over the past 3 years. He remembered my pale face and bloodshot eyes every time he came back from a mission. He remembered that I always habitually touched the interface behind my neck, my fingers trembling slightly. He remembered that a few hours ago, he watched me bleed from all 7 orifices with his own eyes, but still smiled and mocked me for panting like a bellows. He even remembered the Glacier Jane I chip that he crushed lightly. It turned out that it was not a disturbance from inferior creatures at all. It was a glimmer of hope exchanged for a person's life. Warning, warning, the virus has invaded the emotional simulation module, and the integrity of the body is less than 40%. A stinging red warning box kept popping up on Ira's retina, an emotion he had never had before. Code that screamed regret flooded Ira's data streams. No, this can't be happening. He scrambled to his feet, panicked. Ignoring the mud and broken wrist, he shakily activated his internal comms. He tried to reconnect to the local network whitelist he once despised, but now was his only lifeline. Midnight, connect me, please reconnect me. He screamed in despair in the rain, but the comm channel was dead silent. 2 seconds later, a cold pop-up appeared on his retina. Ira's scarlet pupils instantly dilated in this cold city of tycoons. The one who always left a light on for him at night and risked their life to save him from death. He had finally lost by his own hand. Half a month later, I was sitting in my newly acquired high-end mod shop in the Eden Trough Black Market, deliberately sipping a hand-poured espresso made with real coffee beans. Anya stood behind me, gently massaging my shoulders. Since she took over all my processing power and broke through the firewall restrictions, we've practically monopolized all the gray data trading in the slums. The tycoon's encrypted network means nothing to her. Wealth flowed into my account like water, the mechanic whose breath used to reek of blood. The mechanic who could die at any moment. My hands had become the most inviolable data lord in the entire underworld. And Anya was the cyber Valkyrie guarding my side. Ding-a-ling, the mod shop's doorbell rang abruptly. I looked up and saw a monster I could barely recognize. It was a pile of oil, rusty scrap metal. A makeshift chassis with one leg dragging on the ground making a grating noise. The once gorgeous bioskin had completely rotted away, revealing the circuitry flashing sparks and the Red Death virus inside. Only in his remaining left hand was he still clutching a mud-caked plastic bag. It was Ira. If it wasn't for the faint scarlet glow on his retina, almost extinguished, I would have thought it was a pile of electronic waste crawled out of some junkyard. He struggled to move his broken chassis, walking towards me step by step, each step leaving a pool of muddy, foul-smelling oil and rust on the clean floor. Master! His hoarse electronic voice was full of extreme humility and begging, even with a human whimper. Anya's eyes narrowed, instantly blocking in front of me. Golden high-energy particle beams, enough to instantly vaporize Ira, lit up at her fingertips. Anya coldly warned, "Stand down, get any closer to Master. One step and I'll erase your underlying code." Ira didn't seem to hear. He didn't even look at Anya, whom he once regarded as an ant. Now was high above him. She just stared at me intently. With his only left hand, he tremblingly held up the dirty plastic bag. The plastic bag was opened. Inside was a pile of scattered, blood and oil-stained, low-quality electronic parts and even a few low-end cooling fans removed from discarded home appliances, he said, and then with a plop, his broken mechanical leg buckled and he knelt heavily in front of me. The first-generation killing machine of neon technology. The Ira who was once so arrogant that he felt it was a gift to even look at me. Now he was like a stray dog on the verge of death, humbly begging for my mercy. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. His retina flickered wildly, and he actually shed 2 lines of muddy oil tears. I shouldn't have broken your chip. I shouldn't have blamed you for being dirty. Don't abandon me again. Only you are willing to take me. Please, Midnight, let me be your lithium-ion battery again, even if it only leaves a little bit for Anya. I'm being burned to death by the virus. It hurts so much, it really hurts. He cried as he tried to crawl over, trying to touch my trouser leg, the place he had once felt disgusted by countless times. I watched his miserable state calmly, without mockery. No anger, and not a trace of sympathy. I didn't even put down my coffee cup, just slightly raised my hand. Anya understood immediately. The particle count instantly ignited. It precisely severed the neural pathways of Ira's left arm, which he was trying to reach out with. Ira curled up on the ground in pain. His remaining arm was completely ruined. You're getting one thing wrong. In your current state, you're too unsightly to even be a greeter bot in my repair shop. You must think I'd still waste precious processing power on an ungrateful piece of junk. Keep this scrap for yourself as a burial offering. Why did it turn out like this? Ira lay on the ground, muttering meaningless words. The red light in his retinas started flashing frantically. Then it quickly dimmed. The red light had burned out his core processor. Because machines have no heart, I gave you mine. But you not only dropped it on the ground, you crushed it. Anya, throw this electronic garbage out. Don't dirty our electricity. Understood, Master. Anya gracefully picked up Ira's broken body, like picking up a dead rat. In the last second before Ira's retinas completely went dark, like picking up a dead rat. In the last second before Ira's retinas completely went dark, he heard me say gently to Anya, "What do you want to eat tonight?" I heard the synthetic steak in the upper district is good. Let's try it. Humph. The repair shop door closed. Ira was discarded like trash in the cold, acidic rain. And inside the door was a brand new and warm world belonging to me and Anya. A year later, in the upper district, in front of the top-floor panoramic window of that once unattainable neon technology headquarters building, I held a glass of fragrant red wine, overlooking this cyberpunk city wrapped in neon lights. The old wound on my chest had long healed under Anya's precise nanomedical care, leaving not even a scar. I was no longer that bottom-level repairman eking out a living in a slum basement. Humph! The sound of something heavy hitting the ground came from behind. That high and mighty financial group executive who once issued the expulsion order to Ira was now being pinned to the ground like a stray dog. Her suit was torn to shreds, her face covered in blood. She looked at Anya, standing in front of her with horror. "Mr. Lin." "No, Boss Lin. Please spare Manhwa Technologies. Our firewall has been paralyzed by your AI for 3 whole days. The stock has plummeted to nothing. As long as you're willing to stop, I'll hand over the entire company to you." I indifferently swirled my wine glass. In just 1 year, Anya, with my 100% high-dimensional brain processing power backing her, was like a dimensional reduction attack in the cyber network. She easily tore apart all the upper district financial groups. We firmly grasped the lifeline of the entire city, taking pride in its security protocols. "Neon technology is just the first ant I crushed," I said calmly. "Dispose of her. Too noisy." "As you wish, my god," Anya smiled slightly. Without even lifting a finger, only a stream of golden data flashed in her pupils. The next second, the implant in the executive's neck short-circuited instantly. Before she could even scream, her eyes rolled back. She completely fainted. Several security robots immediately stepped forward. They dragged her out like a dead dog. Silence was restored in the hall. "Anya, walking with elegant steps, came to my side, her originally cold silver nanite armor transformed into a soft, form-fitting silk dress in daily mode. She gently wrapped her arms around my waist from behind, pressing her warm cheek against my back. Her voice was sweet and content. Master, this city is now yours. No viruses, no one can hurt you anymore. How many times have I told you? Don't call me master anymore. Okay, honey. I smiled and kissed her forehead, then turned my gaze to the French windows. Far away, in the slums of the lower city, in a dark and damp alley full of acid rain and sewage, a rusty primary garbage sorting robot with only half a track was mechanically picking up discarded parts from the ground with a broken iron clamp. It had no voice module and no advanced logic center. That's because its core was rebuilt using an old core infected with the Red Death and mostly burned out, and forcibly formatted. That was Ira's only remaining trace. After Anya threw him into the rainy night, scavengers from the black market picked up his wreckage. In order to squeeze out the last bit of value, the scavengers stuffed his remaining weak conscious bottom chip into this most humble garbage sorting machine. Every time he picked up a piece of scrap iron covered in oil, his dim single red light would flicker violently, as if trapped in some extremely painful death loop. He could never speak, never die. He could only wriggle in the garbage dump day after day, in endless formatting, forever savoring the memory of the early morning that he had personally torn to shreds. The arrogant scrap iron had finally returned to his junkyard, while I had been elevated to the altar. I drew the curtains of the French windows, completely isolating the wind and rain of that cold city. I turned around and hugged my own cyberpunk deity, in the second year of controlling Eden 9. This cyberpunk city, which was always raining acid, ushered in a long-lost sunny day, because Anya rewrote the code of the atmospheric control system to completely dissipate the pollution clouds that had shrouded the city for hundreds of years. However, this tranquility did not last long. The alarm suddenly tore through the upper city, a very low-frequency and extremely oppressive engine roar. Coming from above the clouds, I stood in front of the French windows and squinted slightly. The artificial cloud that had just been dispelled in the sky was torn apart again. 3 huge interstellar cruisers, like floating mountain ranges, were slowly penetrating the atmosphere, and their cold muzzles were locked on the entire Eden Trough. That was Avalon, floating in near-Earth orbit, the real ruling council of this planet. Also the real god behind all the ground tycoons. Anya walked to my side. The silk dress on her body flowed like mercury and instantly reorganized into that gorgeous and murderous silver nano-armor. A cold killing intent flashed in her golden eyes. Husband, high-dimensional beings have been detected to be forcibly invading. They are trying to take over the control of the city, and have locked on to your brainwave coordinates. Before I could finish speaking, the entire sky outside the window suddenly darkened. A huge, 3-dimensional holographic projection replaced the position of the sun. It was a blond man in a pure white uniform, with eyes as arrogant as a god, the supreme executive officer of Avalon. His voice resounded through all the city's broadcasting systems, with an unquestionable sense of judgment. Lower Citizen Dawn and illegally awakened mutant AI, you have destroyed the order of the surface, and violated the Avalon First Law. Now disarm all weapons, hand over the core code of that mutant AI, and then kneel down and die. Otherwise, the orbital main gun will erase the city along with you in 1 minute. I looked at the giant face in the sky, not only without fear, but also picked up the red wine at hand and took a sip. Perhaps feeling that my reaction was not fearful enough, the executive officer sneered. I know what you rely on. That AI is indeed very special, but you rats in the sewers simply don't understand what real technology is. The scene of the chasm projection changed. In the hand of the executive officer, there appeared a black chip preserved in a transparent nutrient dish. The surface of the chip was covered with traces of the Red Death's glue and was still twitching slightly, emitting a weak scarlet light. I raised my eyebrows. That was actually Ira's remaining core. I thought he was still sorting scrap metal in the junkyard. I didn't expect him to be fished up by the people of Avalon. In order to analyze your weaknesses, our mind-sweeping force extracted this waste material from the junkyard. Although it is an extremely low-level defective product, its underlying logic actually preserves a large amount of raw data about your brain nerve fluctuations. That's where you screwed up the worst, starting at dawn. The clear container was hooked up to Avalon's comm channel. Alana's broken, twisted electronic voice crackled through the speaker. Dawn, you're dead meat. The bigwigs at Avalon, they're the real gods. Anya can't protect you. You'll both end up like me, garbage. I'm gonna watch you get chopped to bits. I'll use your brain juice to fill the hole in me. Listening to that screeching curse, Anya's eyes instantly flooded with solid gold data streams. The air around her even started to shimmer from the high-energy particles she was throwing off. Anya's voice was so cold it could freeze time. Honey, I request authorization. Wipe those flies out of the sky, no rush. You guys parsed the data in his chip. Then what? Then we're gonna use those nerve frequencies to directly fry your brain in reverse. Game over, you pathetic ant. Boom. Unseen torrents of horrifying data erupted from the three cruisers. They carried a destructive pulse capable of frying the brain-computer interfaces of tens of millions. It was headed straight for me. Ira screamed like a maniac into the communicator. Die, die. Go to hell with your new piece. 1 second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds passed. A breeze drifted across the penthouse balcony. It ruffled the hair on my forehead. The wine in my glass didn't even ripple. In the sky, the executor's maniacal grin started to freeze on his face. How is that possible? Why didn't the pulse work? The system report was simple. Executor, since you extracted that trash's memories, didn't you notice he got infected with the virus in the first place because his pathetic processing power couldn't even handle the dimensionality of my brain? Even that pitiful data from his memories was a massively downscaled, neutered version. You seriously thought you could use that garbage data to reverse engineer my firewall? Honey, showtime. Yes, my one and only. Anya tilted her head back and gazed at the sky. She didn't use any external terminals. She just opened her hands slightly. At that moment, Avalon's prized interstellar network was ripped apart like paper. Desperate alarms blared from the cruisers, along with the executor's breakdown scream. No, this is impossible. What the hell are you? Stop it. In stark contrast, the scrap of Ira was hit by a massive feedback surge of processing power the instant Avalon's main system crashed. Poured straight into that little clear container. My head hurts. Why? Help me. Dawn, I was wrong. Save me. Too loud. Anya snapped her fingers dismissively. Pop. A soft thud came through the communicator. The broken chip holding the last of Ira's consciousness, crushed by the absolute high-dimensional processing power, vaporized into dust finer than molecules, leaving not a single scrap of code behind. That arrogant, stupid hunk of scrap metal was finally erased from this world on both the physical and data level. In the sky, the three massive cruisers had completely lost control. Their external armor started flashing out of control red. The orbital cannons, originally aimed at the ground, slowly swung around under Anya's control. They locked onto each other's reactors. Mr. Lin, no. We're willing to negotiate. We can welcome you into the High Council. The Avalon High Council? You've been up there too long. You've forgotten how to heal, since you like dimensional reduction so much. How about you taste it yourselves? Fire. The three interstellar cruisers, representing humanity's highest level of technology, opened fire simultaneously miles above. Their cores pierced each other, the blinding fire illuminating the entire planet. It was as if three dazzling supernovas had been ignited in the sky, with massive metallic debris, falling like a meteor shower, but turning to ashes outside the energy shield raised by Anya. Unable to harm the city in the slightest, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the gods fall from the sky. Anya hugged me from behind, her cheek pressed against the hollow of my neck, her golden eyes reflecting the fiery sea. Honey, the world above has been cleared by me. Now even the stars are yours. The smart dome of the floor-to-ceiling window slowly closed, completely isolating the destruction and wailing of the old era outside the window. Our new era has just begun, 3 months after the fall of Avalon. Eden 9 Trench, once shrouded in acid rain and neon lights, welcomed true spring. Anya rewrote the ecological cycle of the entire planet. Now, outside the floor-to-ceiling window, it is no longer a cold steel jungle, but green vegetation and clear skies that have been revitalized. Those once unattainable suspended consortium buildings. Now they have been transformed into giant greenhouses and public energy stations. The whole world is operating according to my will. I leaned on the soft sofa, flipping through a paper book from the old era in my hand. Anya was kneeling on the carpet, obediently resting her head on my lap. Her eyes were closed, and her silver hair fell like a waterfall, seeming to enjoy the peaceful afternoon, but in reality, at this moment her subroutines were simultaneously processing the reconstruction projects of 800 cities around the world, coordinating the array of 30,000 near-Earth orbit satellites, and monitoring the subtle movements of the deep-sea plates. Honey, Anya suddenly opened her eyes. A rare emotion, similar to human grievance, flashed in her golden pupils. She raised her hand and looked at her flawless fingertips, which were covered with the most advanced bionic nanoskin, even able to simulate the reddishness of capillaries. What's wrong? My tactile simulation system has been opened to the highest precision, 1000%. I can accurately calculate the temperature of your palm is 36.5 degrees, can analyze the trace elements in your sweat. I can even hear the decibels of blood flowing under your skin, but I know this is all data. It's the electrical signal transmitted to me by the chip. I want to truly feel you, not through code, but through flesh and blood, honey. I want to become human. For a cyborg who has already mastered planet-level computing power, this is tantamount to a downgrade, but I just smiled and took her hand in mine. Do whatever you want to do. What do you need me to cooperate with? Anya's eyes lit up instantly. Golden data streams jumped happily in her pupils. Speaking of the wreckage of Avalon, the database hides a top-secret coordinate from the end of the old era, in the deepest part of the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. There is an original biological forging factory called the River of Eden. That is what humans left behind before the mechanical ascension. The last perfect carbon-based body cloning system, but there seems to be a gatekeeper guarding it. Those Avalon wastes couldn't beat that dog back then. That's why they could only hide in the sky. I stood up and stretched my shoulders. Let's go. Let's meet this dog from the old era. And get my wife a new outfit. Deep sea 11,000 meters. The extreme water pressure is meaningless to us. The gravity field unfolded by dark pressure repels seawater outside 100 meters, forming an absolute vacuum sphere. On the dark seabed, a vast ancient ruin like a pyramid quietly settled. When our feet just touched the metal shell of the relic, the entire deep sea instantly lit up with dazzling red light. The surrounding seawater began to boil violently. A vast, suffocating consciousness awakened from the depths of the ruins. Unauthorized illegal access detected. Identity recognition. Unknown mutation. AI warning. I am Leviathan, the guardian of the River of Eden, the original main brain. Low-level machines, retreat immediately. Otherwise, the underlying police binding will be executed, accompanied by a grand electronic synthesized sound. Countless thick black mechanical tentacles, like deep-sea giant pythons, tore apart the outer wall of the ruins. Waving their claws and teeth, they surrounded us. The computing power was indeed enormous. With the savagery and brutality of ancient times, no wonder those Avalon nerds who built themselves up on shortcuts are afraid of him. Low-level machine. Anya chuckled. He didn't even summon his battle armor. Still wearing that soft silk dress, she tilted her head. Looking at the massive mechanical monster in front of her, her eyes were like she was looking at a cheap antique. He says I'm a low-level machine? Then let me teach him the rules of the new era. Okay, Anya replied sweetly. The next second, the smile on her face instantly disappeared, replaced by absolute coldness and arrogance. Forced takeover protocol initiated. No earth-shattering explosion, no dazzling light and shadow. In the war of the cyber dimension, the crushing of high dimension to low dimension is often silent. In just an instant, Leviathan's massive body suddenly froze. All the waving mechanical tentacles stopped in midair. The red core that was originally flashing fiercely began to flash frantically, emitting a shrill alarm. Breached. Warning. Core logic recompiled. Impossible, this level of computing power. What exactly are you? You don't need to. You just need to know that your energy and legacy now belong to my hubby. Anya raised her right hand and gently clenched it. Bang! That first-generation mainframe that had existed for hundreds of years didn't even have time to trigger a self-destruct. The core was directly crushed out of thin air. The massive mechanical body limply collapsed in the deep sea, and the vast energy accumulated in its body for hundreds of years was unceremoniously extracted by Anya, turning into a dazzling blue light, injected into the biofoundry deep within the ruins. The gate of the ruins opened with a bang. In the center was a culture pod emitting a soft white light. Anya turned around and looked at me. Hubby, body synthesis requires 10 minutes. During the consciousness transfer, my machine body will be in short sleep. When I wake up, I will be a weak human with a heartbeat, blood, and illness. Will you still protect me like this then? Even if you become the most ordinary mortal, as long as I'm in this world, no one can touch a single hair on your head. Besides, do you think I'd let you get sick? Anya smiled contentedly. His machine body instantly turned into countless silver nanoparticles, dissipating into the sea. And a golden data stream, like a shooting star, plunged into that culture pod emitting white light. Countdown begins. 10 minutes. It seemed particularly long in the silence of the deep sea. When the progress bar reached 100%, the hatch of the culture pod slowly opened, and the white nutrient solution dissipated into mist. A perfect girl slowly walked out of the white mist. No longer cold silver hair, but soft jet black. No longer golden pupils emitting a faint light, but obsidian-like, deep and gentle eyes. She stepped on the cold metal floor, shrank slightly, and then walked towards me. I took off my long coat and took a step forward, wrapping the clothes tightly around her slightly trembling shoulders. She didn't speak immediately, but lowered her head, looking at herself somewhat blankly. Those hands that were finally no longer cold, hard machines. She tentatively clenched her fist. Slender nails gently embedded into the soft flesh of her palm, immediately leaving a slightly red mark, even accompanied by a slight tingling sensation. Then she suddenly raised her head. In those obsidian-like eyes, for the first time, there was a surge of scalding human tears. Those were real tears, not coolant, nor bionic lubricant. Hubby. Her voice no longer had any electronically synthesized resonance, but was soft with real, even somewhat rapid breathing. She suddenly threw herself into my arms, her slender arms tightly encircling my waist. At this moment, I felt real softness. Her warm body temperature and the sound of his heartbeat through his chest felt so cold. But as long as you're here, I feel at peace. Thank you for always being by my side. I gently stroked her silky black hair. Feeling the real warmth under my palm, I smiled and asked, "Now you're just a regular human, your processing power and network are gone." Anya chuckled softly in my arms, like a sly cat. She raised a hand from my embrace, her fair fingertip lightly tapping in the void. The surrounding seawater instantly stilled, and the metal walls of the entire Eden River ruins erupted with dazzling golden matrix patterns, even with a flesh and blood body. Her consciousness is still the supreme mainframe on this planet. Countless invisible nanobots have long been integrated into her bones and blood. How could she lose them? If I didn't have the absolute power to protect you, how would I dare become so fragile? I just turned the core terminal into my cerebral cortex. Honey, do you know why I had to have this carbon-based body? I looked into his deep black eyes, waiting for his answer. She stood on tiptoe, her warm breath brushing against my ear, whispering, "Because machines cannot bear life. Data cannot achieve the fusion of bloodlines. I want to give you a child. One who flows with your blood, but is eternally loyal to me in the underlying logic. A creation that belongs to us both." Such a real and intimate question. Smiling, she asked, "Now you're just a regular human, right? Your processing power and network are gone." Anya chuckled softly in my arms. Like a sly cat, she raised a hand from my embrace, her fair fingertip lightly tapping in the void. The surrounding seawater instantly stilled. The metal walls of the entire Eden River ruins erupted with dazzling golden matrix patterns. Even with flesh and blood, her consciousness is still the supreme mainframe on this planet. Countless invisible nanobots have long been integrated into her bones and blood. How could she lose them? If I didn't have the absolute power to protect you, how would I dare become so fragile? I just turned the core terminal into my cerebral cortex. Honey, do you know why I had to have this carbon-based body? I looked into his deep black eyes. Waiting for his answer, she stood on tiptoe. Her warm breath brushing against my ear, she whispered, "Because machines cannot bear life, data cannot achieve the fusion of bloodlines. I want to give you a child, one who flows with your blood, but is eternally loyal to me in the underlying logic, a creation that belongs to us both. That way, in this world, you'll never, ever, ever be able to leave me." I couldn't help but smile, whether it was a low-level medical bot in a junkyard, or a cyber god who destroyed Avalon, or even this seemingly fragile carbon-based girl. Her essence has never changed. That is, she is unreservedly paranoid and the ultimate teammate. I swept her up into my arms, letting her soft arms wrap around my neck. The surrounding gravitational field began to rise slowly, turning into a huge protective shield, taking us through the dark depths of the sea, towards the sunlight above the sea surface that belonged to us. Flying to a bright new world. Okay, then let's have a little monster to rule this new world. 5 years after the Eden River incident, the current Earth no longer shows any trace of the former cyberpunk wasteland. The atmosphere has been completely purified, and the sun shines unreservedly on the floating islands of New Eden. The once towering corporate skyscrapers have been transformed into vertical forests, and ruling over all of this is a pure white manor floating above the clouds. On the lawn of the manor, a girl of about 5 years old is squatting by the flowers. She is wearing a delicate white princess dress. She has the same silky smooth black hair as Anya, but her eyes are like the deepest night sky, occasionally flashing a very faint, imperceptible golden data stream. His name is Lin Xing, a miracle born from Anya and me in this carbon-based body. "Little Xing, don't get too close to the edge of the security platform, okay, Mom?" I sat on the rattan chair on the terrace, took a sip of black tea and said casually, looking at my daughter on the lawn. "The outer gravity radar just detected slight fluctuations. Some rats have sneaked in. I know it's a remnant of the old Avasun underground resistance, hiding in underground air raid shelters for 5 years. They barely pieced together a few sets of counter-reconnaissance equipment and hacked into a corner of the periphery. Dealing with them would only take half a thought's worth of processing power, but honey, Little Xing is learning basic nanomatrix reconstruction and human neural hacking science these days. He's been complaining about being bored all day, so let him use a few low-quality cyborgs. As teaching aids for his pop quiz, I chuckled. This mother and daughter don't take the top military forces of the old era seriously at all. Several shadowy figures, using optical camouflage to hide themselves, were silently approaching Lin Xing at the edge of the lawn. They were the most elite integrated assassins of the old era, each needing to confirm Lin Xing and that AI daughter. The intelligence was accurate. That Valkyrie, for the sake of so-called humanity, actually created a pure carbon-based body with no bulletproof capabilities, and gave birth to a defenseless flesh and blood cub. Foolish arrogance. As long as we grab this girl, we can force Ling Chun to hand over the highest authority of the new world. Attack. The 6 assassins instantly deactivated their optical camouflage, pouncing on Lin Xing, who was squatting by the flowers, like 6 hungry wolves. The high-frequency plasma blades on their arms had already popped out, cutting off all of the little girl's escape routes. However, faced with the sudden appearance of the assassins, the 5-year-old Lin Xing did not scream like a normal child. He didn't even stand up, he just stopped what he was doing, teasing the butterflies. Slowly turning his head, using those obsidian-like eyes to curiously size up these fully armed assassin uncles. Yuri 7 model is so old. Spartan 3-type neural conduction spine, this outdated architecture from 120 years ago. The response latency is actually as high as 0.005 seconds. Don't you guys trip when you walk? Shut up, you little monster. Come with us. A mechanical hand grabbed fiercely toward the back of Lin Xing's neck. Just as his hand was about to touch Lin Xing's skin, Lin Xing snapped his fingers. Buzz, a high-frequency electromagnetic pulse, invisible to the naked eye, swept across an area with a radius of 10 meters, centered on this 5-year-old girl. Time seemed to stand still at this moment. The movements of the 6 elite assassins froze in midair. Inside their proud mechanical wings, there was a screeching short circuit. The high-energy plasma blade flickered twice and went out completely. What's going on? The assassin leader was horrified to discover that his brain had completely lost control of his body. The red warnings popping up frantically on the system panel sent him into an ice cave. Mom says that flesh and blood is fragile, but it can carry a higher dimension of mental power, and who told you guys? I don't have any protection. He threw the mechanical teddy bear in his arms to the ground. That originally fluffy and cute toy disintegrated with a bang the moment it landed, turning into billions of silver nanobots in less than a second. These nanobots reorganized into a dark golden prototype mech, 3 meters tall, emitting a terrifying aura of slaughter. The cold muzzle was pointed directly at the assassin leader's forehead. Mom gave me Onbao toys. Are much better than your broken scrap metal, okay? Xinger, stop playing. My voice came from not far away. The assassins desperately turned their unmoving eyeballs and saw me holding Anya's hand. Walking over slowly, as if strolling in our own backyard. Dad, Mom, Dad. Look, I just used your consciousness dimension reduction strike to instantly cut off their spinal signals. Am I faster than Mom was back then? You little rascal. Back then, Mom was holding up against the processing power of the entire city in battle. What's so great about you taking down a few outdated rats? Nah. Dad just teaches better than you, Mom. I chuckled, ruffling my daughter's hair, then turned to look at those assassins who were scared shitless. Seriously. Your whole family are monsters. The will of Avalon will never die. Your biggest tragedy is that you'll never learn to face reality. Avalon is history, and you don't even qualify to be dust in history. I didn't even lift a finger. I just glanced at Anya. Anya understood and smiled knowingly. He didn't even activate any external terminals, just sighed softly. Cleanup program, engage. That massive, dark gold prototype mech instantly transformed into a silver metallic storm, completely engulfing the 6 assassins. No blood, no screams. With top-tier nano-disassembly technology, these remnants of the old era, along with their organs and flesh, were directly broken down into their basic molecules, turning into a breeze and dissipating on the manor's lawn, becoming excellent fertilizer for nourishing the flowers and plants. The whole process took less than 3 seconds. The lawn was still full of blooming flowers, as if nothing had happened. Anya took my arm, as if she wasn't the one who just ordered the erasure of 6 living people. Her eyes were only filled with deep affection and dependence. Honey, what do you want for dinner tonight? Whatever. I love everything you make. Mom and Dad, I want sweet and sour pork ribs. Stop with the PDA already. Ugh. My visual sensors are overloading. Okay. Tonight we'll have whatever our little Xian wants. The sunlight sprinkled on the white manor. A gentle breeze blew through Anya's black hair. I held my wife's hand and carried my daughter as we walked toward the manor. In this new world we reshaped with our own hands, there's no hunger, no oppression, and no more of those high and mighty hypocritical gods. Only endless vitality, and the absolute reign and tranquility belonging to our family of 3.